So I've gotten through the bigger name, more notable quarterback prospects for this year's draft, but there are still other prospects, right? And they've got to be scouted too. They've got to be studied because it's not always the biggest name guys that can make an impact in the NFL, right? I mean, 2022 is not the best example of it from a season standpoint, but for a career, Russell Wilson was a third-round pick. And you think back before that, Tony Romo was undrafted. Yeah, some of these guys are like the exceptions to the rule, certainly, but it can happen. Kirk Cousins was a fourth-round pick. Dak Prescott was a fourth-round pick. And while those last two I named aren't exactly elite superstars, they are NFL starting quarterbacks that were found on day 3 of the draft. So those guys do exist. It does happen. It doesn't happen as frequently or as often, but, when I think about some of these less notable quarterback prospects every year, sometimes you got to sort through some of the crap and dismiss some of these guys. You're like, yeah, they have no chance. Or, yeah, these guys are backup only. But you look at, and maybe there's a guy in there in that mix that you say, hey, maybe he has some starter potential. And I'm not sure if Clayton Tune has true starter potential at the NFL, but he was a solid prospect that I was at least mildly impressed with. I really like, he has good build, hand size for the position, solid weight and bulk on his frame. So physically, he looks the part and it feels like he's the part. He also has quick feet to avoid pressure and extend plays, and is a threat to gain yards as a rusher. And when you think about the modern NFL, especially for these younger quarterbacks, a way for them to get into the rhythm of a game early is to use their feet, to just make some plays, right? To be a runner. And when you think about the premium that you place on being able to pass the ball, it's still by far the most important attribute and element of a quarterback's game. But it's not as important for young quarterbacks to take over as a starter and be great as a passer from day one, or try to be great as a passer from day one, if they can make some damage happen with their feet, because it's another way to attack opposing defenses. So that is something that Tune has. I'm not sitting there calling him an elite or great runner or athlete or anything like that, but he's solid. He can get some yards as a runner for sure. I don't like as a passer how he's able to keep his eyes down the field when he's on the move. He's also really good squaring his shoulders, throwing to either side on the move. Shows a feel for where the checkdowns are, and he's good at finding them. He's got some decent velocity on his shorter throws too. Like his arm strength's not special or anything like that, but it's serviceable enough. He also showed some ability to me, especially in 2022, of being able to go through his progressions, at least get to his secondary reads. Sometimes he stay a little too long on the primary read, I'll grant you that, but he showed some ability to go through his progressions, which is certainly nice. And what you maybe like about a guy like Tune is that he has a lot of experience as a starter at college. 47 career games, so that's a lot of experience. That's a lot of work at the college level, and even if you say, well, he did it at Houston, so it wasn't like it was a major Power 5 school or something like that. It was still at the Division I level, so to speak. It was still, at a somewhat high level of college football, so that matters. He was also a 3-time team captain, so when you think about, a guy and their pedigree and their history, and you're trying to figure out one of the important things for a quarterback is, can they be a leader of men? Well, this guy was a 3-time team captain, so it has to point to, at some point in time along the way, his teammates, coaching staff, thought that this guy was a great leader. To do it three straight times, yeah, there's got to be something there. So, when we're talking about some of these second-tier, third-tier quarterback prospects, you have to look a little harder sometimes to find the things you like, or you might not have things that are as great, but you might be able to hold on to a couple of them and say that, hey, this could point to having a little bit of higher potential. But certainly has some weaknesses, right? As we're finding a common trend and theme for this year's quarterback class. He's a bit older as a prospect. He's 24, so it's not 25 or 26, but it's still not 21 or 22 years of age. And it doesn't matter as much as if he was a little older, but still, he is a little old for being an impending rookie. Also talking about his arm strength, I mentioned before that he's okay, like his velocity is good on his shorter throws, but it definitely wanes on his intermediate passes and especially the deep ball. you would worry about him going to a place where he was expected to make a lot of, vertical throws, like really stretching out the field. That is not exactly a great fit for him from a systemic and tool standpoint. He also can get really bad happy feet in the pocket. He's too quick to scramble out. Sometimes that's that excitement of, getting caught up in the moment. But that is a thing you don't want your quarterback to do too often, especially at the NFL level, is be so quick to bail out. Because everything gets quicker, right? And that includes the defenders that will be chasing you down when you try to scramble out. Eventually that shit's going to bite you in the ass. His ball placement at the short, intermediate, and deep levels could definitely use some work. He also has a bit of a tendency to be laser focused on his primary read. I referenced the fact that he showed the ability to get to his second read, but far too often he would just kind of lock in on that side of the field, and that was it, with some sprinkling once in a while of going to his secondary read or knowing where his check down was and going to that. Another thing, and maybe this is a reflection of the lack of great arm strength, Clayton Tune showed a hesitation with wanting to make tight window throws. And at the NFL level, you've got to be able to do that. Now, in some cases, you might make that tight window throw just based off of sheer arm strength, velocity. Other times, you might have to do that with accuracy, placement, anticipation. But you got to do it. You got to be able to do it. It's not every guy at the NFL level is going to be open by 3 or 4 yards. You got to make tight window throws. And sometimes it looked like he was a little afraid to do that. So when I look at Clayton Tune overall, he's highly experienced. He is a bit older, but really experienced. I think he's a prospect that could fit a variety of different systems. What concerns you most in terms of his true upside and what probably prevents him from being drafted a little bit higher is his lack of higher-end arm talent. It's just not there. He's a smart kid, good leader, tough, competitor, all of that. And that stuff's nice. But you'd like to have more pure physical talent, too, especially if you were drafting a guy higher. But like I said, he's an experienced leader, has an ability to move that you like as well out of the position, really fits into the modern game. I look at him, and he reminded me some of Gardner Minshew coming out of college. Again, not a perfect comparison, but there were certainly some elements there. Some ability to move. Sometimes the ball placement was a little less than ideal. Minshew's arm strength would wane as you threw it deeper. However, there was a gamer element to him. There was something you really liked about him. There's something kind of infectious about him. And there was to me when I was watching Clayton Tune. So if I was a team looking for a guy, mid-day 3, I've got a late fifth round grade on him. If you're looking for a guy that you feel at worst case will be a solid backup in the NFL, but is a guy that, if you get the conditions just right and you coach him up just right, he could end up being a fringe low-end NFL starter. Clayton Tune might be that guy.